Masechet Baba Batra, Daf Mem Dalid. The Daf today will focus on this one Baraita that we're going to quote, and it's going to offer two interpretations of the Baraita. That's the entire Sugya. So let's see what it teaches. Tenu Rabbanan. Machar lo bayit, machar lo sadeh, en me'id lo aleha, mipnei she'achariyuto alav. Machar lo para, machar lo talit, me'id lo alea mipnei she'en achariyuto alav. We're contrasting two cases. The Resha is talking about land, real estate, and the Sefa about movable items. Now, if someone sells to someone else a house, so we have a seller and a buyer, or he sells him property, and then someone comes and contests the ownership of that particular land. So we have a claimant, someone who's suing. So he's suing the buyer. He's saying, buyer, this is not yours, which would mean in turn that it was never the seller's legally for the seller to sell it to the buyer, because this guy claims that it is his field all along. Now, the seller claims that he has testimony regarding the rightful ownership of the buyer. He's the one that sold it to him, so he has testimony either that it doesn't belong to the claimant or that it does in fact belong to him who sold it to the buyer. The Baraita teaches that the seller cannot testify. He cannot be one of the witnesses that will testify on behalf of the buyer. Why? Because he is an interested party, right? He has responsibility over the field, to the seller over the field. The idea is that if I sell you a field and then that field gets taken away for some reason, then, well, depending on do I guarantee the sale or not? That's one thing that Gemara will discuss. So if I guarantee the sale, well, in that case, I'm going to have to pay you back for the money that you paid me for the field, because it was taken away from you. And so therefore I am an interested party in making sure that the field remains in your possession. Furthermore, I might have a lien on that property, and so someone may come and say, well, I have to pay that guy, someone that I owe money to, $10,000, right? I'm the seller, and I'm interested in you having that field so that if I don't have money to pay, he will come after that field and take it from you, and then I won't have to. Then my debt will be cleared. That would be assuming that I don't have to pay you back for it. So I have interest in making sure that the field remains yours, and therefore I am not trusted as a witness because I am an interested party. All right, that's the Resha when it comes to field. However, if I sell you a cow or a garment, so we have a seller and a buyer, and then someone comes and claims, so this cow, this doesn't belong to you, this belongs to me, this claimant says. And the seller, I want to testify that it's yours and it's not his. In that case, that's okay, because I am not responsible for the cow. Generally, when it's a movable item, if I sell you something and then something happens, it gets taken away by a creditor or by someone else, so the sale is final, right? It was your responsibility to check to make sure that it was really mine and that there was no other claim on it, and so I don't have to pay you back. Since I don't have to pay you back for it, so therefore, I don't really care if someone takes it away from you or if it remains in your hands. Since I don't care about it, therefore I'm not an interested party, and therefore I can be a witness. So the truth is that this Baraita is actually pretty straightforward. The difference between real estate and movable items is that generally, for real estate, there is the one creates a lien on real estate, and if it's taken away, then I'm going to be responsible for it. So therefore, I am an interested party. Whereas for movable items, generally there is not a lien on it. I am not responsible if it gets taken away. So because of that, that's the main difference. However, that's going to be the second answer. We're going to come to that. But right now, we're not saying that. Instead, we ask, "Mai shena resha or mai shena sefa?" What's the difference between the resha and the sefa? Because right now we're assuming that when you sell land, it could be be with a guarantee or without a guarantee. Could be that there's a lien or not a lien. And movable items, we're not sure yet. Maybe there is a guarantee on movable items, and if it gets taken away, then I'm going to have to pay you back. So I would have an interest in movable items. So we're not using that distinction. We'll come to that in the second answer. So right now we're going to have the first answer. The first answer is somewhat of a complicated case. Not that complicated. Let's just follow it step by step. So Amar Rav Sheshat says, Resha beRuven shegazal sadeh mishimon umechara leLevi v'ata Yehuda v'kam me'arer dela lezil Shimon le'ashed leLevi denicha dehadra. So Rav Sheshat creates a multi-step case. Now, of course, it doesn't say any of this in the language of the Braita. It just says, right, I sold a field to you, and then someone else comes and wants it. But Rav Sheshat is adding a couple of extra steps, and we'll see what the logic is and as we discuss this further. So Rav Sheshat is talking about a field that was owned by Shimon, allegedly owned by Shimon. Reuven comes and steals that land, and Reuven then sells it to Levi. Okay, so it went from Shimon, stolen by Reuven. So Reuven sells it to Levi, even though it's actually certainly doesn't belong to Reuven. He's just a thief, but he sells it to Levi, and Levi doesn't know that it was stolen. And then Yehuda comes. He's not related to any of these people, and he makes a claim and says that this land does not never belonged to Shimon, not to Reuven, and not to Levi. If it didn't belong to Shimon, then certainly Reuven's the thief of something that he didn't even steal, that wasn't even owned by the person he stole it from, and he sold something that was never owned by him or by Shimon to Levi. So Yehuda is coming and saying, this field is mine, it's not any of theirs. Okay, now the Shimon, who was the original owner, or alleged original owner, we don't really know who's right and who's wrong, he wants to testify that it does not belong to, he wants to testify against Yehuda. Can he do that? Rav Sheshat explains that the Reshav, this Baraita, is teaching that Shimon cannot go and be a witness on behalf of Levi. Why? Because Shimon, since he is claims to be the original owner, and this land was stolen by Reuven and then sold to Levi, Shimon wants to get it back from Levi. His plan is go to Levi, say, listen, you bought this land from Reuven, but he's a thief and he stole it from me. So Shimon has interest in keeping the land in the hands of Levi so that then Shimon can go collect it from Levi. If Yehuda wins the case, then it will belong to the Yehuda, and Shimon will not be able to get it back at all, because it was not, Yehuda says, I owned it the whole time, right? Reuven stole land from Yehuda, because it was Yehuda's. So Shimon would not be able to get it back. That's the case we're talking about, where Shimon is considered an interested party. Now we want to clarify, what is this case that Rav Sheshat is talking about? In a little while, we'll explain how the Resha is different from the Sefa. But right now, we want to understand what the Resha's case is. Hold on. What is Shimon going to come and testify? If he comes and testifies, oh, this land belongs to Levi, because he doesn't want Yehuda to take it. Well then, once he establishes that this belongs to Levi, how is he going to later on take it away from Levi? Once someone makes an admission is even stronger than witnesses. So if he comes and says, I testify, this land belongs to Levi, then it's going to remain in Levi's hands, and Shimon won't be able to get it back. So he's not an interested party. So we should let him testify, because there's no way Shimon's going to get it back from Levi after testifying that it belongs to Levi. And the answer is no, Shimon is not going to testify that it belongs to Levi. He's just going to testify that it doesn't belong to Yehuda. Yehuda's coming to claim it. He says, no, I know Yehuda is not the owner. I'm not saying who is the owner. And that way, Yehuda, if Yehuda loses the case, Yehuda will go away. It will remain in the hands of Levi. And then Shimon can come bring testimony that Reuven stole it from him, and he'll get it back. That's the case, and that's why he's considered an interested party and cannot be a witness. And now we ask, hold on, since Shimon is planning in the second stage to take it from Levi, obviously he has some proof that it belongs to him and that Reuven stole it and sold it to Levi. So why would he bother giving testimony that it's not Yehuda's and only later on go get it from Levi? Why not use the testimony that he has up front instead of doing a two-step process? Why not come and say, I have proof that this is mine, right? Shimon will say, this is mine, here's my proof, and that way he could take it from Yehuda. Why does he have to testify against Yehuda? Let Yehuda take it from Levi, and then Shimon will say, I have proof, I have a deed, I have whatever he has, he can bring as testimony and take it anyway. And the answer is, Damar Hasheni Noachli Harishon Kasheli. Because Shimon says, listen, one of these people is easy to deal with, the other one is difficult to deal with. The second one, that is the second one means Levi. Is easy for me to deal with. Levi's he's a nice guy, and he bought it without knowing. I'd rather bring him to court, and he's not going to give me a hard time, and so I'd rather remain in the hands of Levi because I want to deal with it. The first guy, that is Yehuda, he's a tough guy. I don't want to deal with him in court. It's going to be such a pain. I'm going to have to pay extra lawyer's fees, and he's going to when he litigates. So that's why I'm going to testify first that it does not belong to Yehuda, and that way it'll remain in the hands of Levi. Good. Once I do that, then I'll come to Levi and say, listen, I have evidence that this was mine, and Reuven stole it, and he sold it to you, and I'd rather do that. So that's the case of the Resha that we're talking about. That's one possibility. This is another answer just to this last question. The last question is, why does he do a two-step process? Why not just let Yehuda have it and then take it from Yehuda? So it could be that we're talking about a case where Shimon has two witnesses and Yehuda also has two witnesses. Now the rule of the rabbis is, if it's two witnesses against two witnesses, what do? It's kind of at a standstill. So the land will remain where it is. Wherever it is, it stays there. Therefore, if Yehuda succeeds in getting the land from Levi, then Shimon will not be able to get it back, because now Yehuda will have the land in his possession, and he has two witnesses that belongs to him. And Shimon has two witnesses that belongs to him, so the court is going to say, well, Yehuda keeps it. And therefore, Shimon, who's claiming he's the original owner, he wants it to remain in the hands of Levi, because Levi does not have two witnesses. And therefore, if he can keep Yehuda from getting the land and it stays in the possession of Levi, then he can produce his two witnesses that actually belong to him, and he can get it back. Okay, so either way, he wants to make it a two-step process and keep it in the hands of Levi and then get it from Levi. Because he wants to do that, and therefore he has interest in testifying. Since he has personal interest in testifying, he cannot testify. He's disqualified. Good. Now, velokma begazan. Now we ask about Rav Sheshet. Why are you adding this extra step? Or in your interpretation of the Braita, why is the Braita adding an extra step that it was that the thief sold it to someone else? Right? We said that it belonged to Shimon, and Reuven stole it, and Reuven sold it to Levi. Skip the last step of selling it to Levi. Just say that Reuven stole it from Shimon, and then Yehuda comes and says, oh, that doesn't belong to Reuven, who's holding on to it, but rather it belongs to me, Yehuda. And in that case, Shimon will come and testify, no, Yehuda, it's not yours, because Shimon would rather it stay in the hands of Reuven for the time being, so that he can go and sue Reuven and say Reuven's a thief, look, I have proof. And he would rather deal with Reuven. And so he has interest in making sure Yehuda doesn't get it from Reuven. So just say it's talking about that case. Why do you have to add an extra step that Reuven sold it to Levi? That's the question. And the answer is Mishum deka ba'el mitna sefa. Now we come to the sefa, because there has to be a distinction between the cases. So in fact, you're right, in the Resha, it really wouldn't matter if it was stolen from Shimon and he wants to get it back, and Yehuda claims that he wants to get it back, he cannot be a good witness. Or if it was stolen and sold, and then Yehuda comes and claims it, and he wants to get it back. Either case in the Resha, Shimon would not be able to testify because he's an interested party. So it doesn't really matter for the Resha, but it will matter for the Sefa. So Sefa says, Machar lo para, machar lo talit. דדווקא מחר תבע לייאוש ושינוי רשות, אבל לא מחר דדרלה לתנה רשע נמה מחר. In the Sefer, that's if someone sells to someone else a cow or a garment, and only if it has to be a case where it was stolen and sold. So again, we're applying the same thing that Rav Sheshet said to the second case. You have Shimon, and he has a cow. And Reuven stole the cow from Shimon, and he sold it to Levi. So in that case, because it was stolen and sold, if something is stolen and sold, so you have two things. Yeush, the original owner, is going to despair of getting it because it was robbed from him. So how am I going to get it back? And it changed hands because by selling it, by the thief, Reuven, selling it to Levi, it changed hands. Once you have those two factors, despair and the change of hands, then Shimon cannot get the item back. You see, even if he despairs, but the item is still in the hands of the robber, Shimon can get it back from the robber. He can say, bring evidence that it's his, and he'll be able to get it back. However, once the thief sells it, so now if the original owner has despair, and now it's no longer in the robber's hands, the original owner cannot get the item back. He can bring the thief to court to pay. He still has to pay for the amount of the item that he stole, but the actual cow itself, now it's in new hands. It's like, that's it. It's out of reach of the original owner. And that's why the Sefa is different from the Resha. Because in the Resha, when it comes to land that does not apply to. Even if land is stolen and changes hands, even 10 times, it doesn't matter. Land cannot be stolen. I mean, people can come and try to take your land, but it's there, it exists, and it's always yours. As long as you can claim it's yours, then even if you had despair and it changes hands, you can get it back. Since you can get it back, Shimon is an interested party, he cannot testify. But in the Sefa, because it was stolen and sold, therefore Shimon can never get the land back. Since he cannot get the land back, so he can testify because he's not an interested party. But if he didn't sell it, then he would be able to get the land back, and then he would be an interested party, and so it would be the same law as the Resha. So because in the Sefa it has to be a two-step process, that's the only case where he can't get it back, so he's not an interested party. So that's why he said stolen and sold. So therefore, in the Resha also, it brings the same case, stolen and sold. Even though in the Resha, even if it was just stolen, it would be the same law. Okay, v'sefa nameh ni demi'ash migufe mi demeh mi mi'ash. Hold on. In the Sefa also, let's say it's the same case that we're talking about, where Shimon owned this cow, and Reuven stole it, and he sold it to Levi, and now Yehuda comes and claims that it's his, and so the Sefa says, Yehuda can testify because he can no longer get the cow back. Now, because there was a Yeush and a change of hands. Now, so we ask, it's true that there was Yeush from the cow itself, and he can never get the cow back, but he can still collect money from the robber, and therefore he is still interested in making sure that the cow actually did once upon a time belong to him and it was stolen. If Yehuda comes and wins the case, so Yehuda will have been the owner all along. Shimon was never the owner. Shimon will never get any money back. But as long as Shimon can, if he testifies, then and it stays in the hands of Levi, so then he can say, okay, well Levi will keep the cow because it was already have despair and change of hands. But at least Shimon can sue the robber and get money back. So he is still an interested party and therefore should not be able to testify. Good question. And we answer, La Sericha demit gazlan ditnan hagozel machil et banav v'iniach lifnehem peturin meleshalem. Or rather, this baraita is only talking about, as if we didn't put enough ukim taught limitations on the particular case of the baraita, we're further talking about a case where the robber died. And we learned in a Mishnah back in Baba Kama that if someone steals food and gives it to his children to eat, or he dies and he leaves them, let's say he stole a cow, and he leaves it to his children as an inheritance, the children do not have to pay. That's it. It's on different hands. Not only don't they have to give the cow back, they don't even have to pay. Their father stole. Okay, go get the money from the father. Father died. Children don't have to pay for what their father stole. And since we're talking about a case where the robber died, therefore and the cow itself was already sold. Now, so the Yehuda will not be able to get not the cow back and not even the money back. Therefore, he is not an interested party. So really, adding a lot of okimtot to this baraita. Okay, but so far so good. The case works. And now we say v'lokma biyoresh. Hold on. Since you're talking about a thief that died and it went to his heirs, so why do you have to say that the thief sold the cow to Levi and then died? So, because you could just say he didn't sell to Levi, he just died. And the sons inherited the cow. And you just taught that the sons don't have to give back the cow and also don't have to pay. So we can simplify the case at least a little bit and say we're talking about Shimon, who had a cow. And it was stolen by Reuven. Reuven died, and the cow went to his heirs. And then Yehuda is coming and claiming against the heirs, this was never yours to even inherit because it belongs to me. And in that case, Shimon will be able to testify against Yehuda because he's not an interested party. Because in this case, Shimon cannot get the cow back, nor can he get the money for the cow back because Reuven is died and his heirs don't have to pay. And that would be a simpler case than saying that Reuven stole it, sold it to Levi, and also died. Why do you have to add so many steps? Now we can answer the question according to the view, there's a machloket about this, the view that says that the possession of an heir is not the same as the possession of a buyer. In that case, it makes sense, because according to that view, only if it gets transferred by a sale to someone else, then that's called despair and a transfer of ownership, and the original owner cannot get the item back, cannot get the cow back. But this view says that an heir is not like a buyer. An heir is considered a continuation of the ownership of the father, and just like Shimon could get it from Reuven back, so too he can get the original cow back from the heirs, because the heirs are not considered a transfer of possession. It's just a continuous possession. So according to that, we would understand why you need both. He has to sell it to someone else so he can't get the cow back, and Reuven has to die so that he doesn't have to pay there's no possibility of getting the money back from the heirs. Okay, so we have a partial answer, but there is another view that says that the transfer of possession from a father to an heir is the same as a transfer of possession from a seller to a buyer. And just like if you sell something, then the original owner can't get it back, from the thief. So too, if someone steals something and dies and gives it to his heir, also that's considered despair and a change of ownership, and he cannot get it back. According to that view, we still have the question, why can't you make a simpler case of Reuven stole it and died? And you could skip the part that he sold it to Levi. Ve'od kashya. We don't answer that question. We add instead another challenge. Ve'od kashya lele Abaye. Abaye has a question on the Rav Sheshat's opinion, which was this whole interpretation. Mipnei shachariyuto alav ve'en achariyuto alav mipnei shehi chozeret lo ve'ena chozeret lo miba'ele. Rav Sheshat, your interpretation doesn't fit the words of the Braita. The Braita says that the difference between land and a movable item is that for land, he is responsible for it. The seller is still responsible to make sure that it's in the seller's ownership, because otherwise he's going to be responsible for making up the difference if it gets taken away. Whereas with the cow, he is not responsible for it. That's what the Braita says. According to Rav Sheshat, the Braita should have said because he can get it back or because he cannot get it back. In the case of land, he is able to get it back, and therefore he's an interested party. Even if it's stolen and sold, he can always get it back, and so he wants to make sure it stays in the hands of Levi and not go to Yehuda because he wants it back. In the case of a cow, he cannot get it back because it was stolen and sold, or stolen and went to an heir, and that's where he cannot get it back. That would be the reason. So the wording of the Braita does not fit your long and complicated interpretation of Sheshat, and therefore we offer a second answer, which is going to be a lot simpler. Ela kederabin bar Shemuel, damar Rabin bar Shemuel mishmei de Shemuel, hamoches hadeh lechavero shelo ba'achrayut and ma'id lo aleha, mipnei shema'amida bifnei ba'al chob. Rather, we're going to follow what Ravin, the son of Shemuel, said, because he said in the name of Shemuel. We actually saw this statement on the previous daf, that if someone sells land to his friend without a guarantee, right? He says, I'm not guaranteeing this sale. It's a final sale. That's it. Yeah, I'm giving you the land. You're giving me $1 million, and I'm keeping it no matter what, even if this land is taken away from you by a creditor or by someone else who claims that it's theirs. I'm not giving you back the money. There's no guarantee. Okay. So, right, there's it doesn't matter, even if the title search ends up being wrong and it wasn't mine, I'm not giving you money back. In that case, the seller cannot testify on behalf of the buyer. Why? Because I, the seller, am interested in making sure that you are the owner of the land, you, the seller, and that just shouldn't go to some other guy, Yehuda, who's claiming that it's his. Why am I interested? Because I want it to be there, established, before my creditor, right? I owe someone $1 million, and I sold you this land without a guarantee for $1 million. So now I have $1 million in my pocket. I went, I spent it, whatever. The creditor comes and says, hey, you owe me money. As I have no money. Sorry, I can't pay you. I have a lien on your land. Where's the land? Oh, I sold it to you. Okay, so my creditor will go to you, take the land, and he's paid back for his loan. And so I'm good with him. And since I sold it to you without a guarantee, I don't have to pay you back. So you see, it's in my interest to make sure that you own the land. And that way, I won't ever have to pay you, and the creditor will also be satisfied. So that's in my interest. If, on the other hand, some other guy, Yehuda, comes and takes the land from you, well then my creditor will not be able to take that land, and then I'm going to be in trouble. He's going to take some other land of mine, or I'm just going to be at Asha of not paying back the loan. So that's what Shemuel says. Now, this is true regarding real estate. ודווקא בית או שדה, אבל פרה וטלית לא מבעיה בסתמה דלה משתעבדה לה, מה טעמה? מטלטלנינו, מטלטלה לבעל חוב לא משתעבדה. ואף אגב דכתב למגילימה דעל כתפה, הנמלה דאיתנהו בעיניהו, אבל תלתנהו בעיניהו לה. So this is true regarding real estate. That's where, if I sell it to you without a guarantee, and there's a lien on real estate, often, all right, as long as I have a loan out, and that loan preceded the sale, so if I own land when I made the loan, there's going to be a lien on that land, if I did it with a written document. And so, it's in my interest to make sure that you, the seller, hold on to that land so that it's available to the creditor. That applies to real estate. However, for a cow or a garment or other movable items, then that's not true. Not only in a case where I sell without specification, so we're going to talk about that case first, and then we're going to talk about the something with specification. So if I sell it to you without any specification, then there is no lien on the item. Why? Because it's a movable item, and movable items you don't create a lien on movable items to a creditor. And even if I write in my document to the creditor, right, I owe him $1 million, and I write in it, and you have a lien on all my lands, and even if I write in it, and you can even take the shirt off my back. This statement is actually mentioned in the ketubah that we use until today, right? That the husband has to provide for the wife and give her food and clothing and shelter, even if he has to sell the cloak off of his shoulders. The husband has to provide for her. Okay, even if he writes that, that's true only for items that are in his possession currently. But once he sells them, then that's it. There's no lien on the item that will follow it after it's sold. And so therefore, if I have a cow I own this cow. I take a loan out of this from this guy, and I owe him $1 million. And even if I write in it, you can take everything. All my possessions will be obligated to the loan. And then I sell the cow to you, and then he comes to me, and I don't have enough money to pay for it. He cannot come after the cow because there's no lien on the cow. That's it. Once it's sold, he cannot get it, and therefore I don't care if you keep the cow or if you have some other guy, Yehuda, comes and takes the cow from you. Makes no difference to me because it's not going to be used. It's not going to be helpful to me to pay back my loan, and therefore I can be a witness. So that's true all in a case where I just sold it without specification. And now we add in a further chidush. Ela filo asa'a apotiki nami la. Ma'itama kidrava damarava. Asav do apotiki mcharo ba'al chov gove mimenu. Shorov achamaro apotiki mcharo en ba'al chov gove mimenu. Even if I made this item, this particular cow, let's say, I designated it as a form of payment. I told the guy I owe him $1,000. I said, listen, I owe you money. This cow I'm designating as to use for repayment. So you own specifically, you can come and claim this cow. Even if I say that, once I sell the cow, you cannot take it anymore. The lien does not follow the cow everywhere it is, only if I currently own it. And why? How do we know that that's true? Because Rava teaches so. Rava says, if I have a slave and I tell someone who I owe money to, listen, this slave is designated for repayment of the loan, and then I sell the slave, then the creditor can go and take the slave, right? A lien will follow a slave. A slave, in many ways, is like land. So you can have a lien on that can be repossessed. However, if it's an animal or other movable items, and I designate it, and then I sell it, the creditor cannot come and take it. You don't make a lien on movable items. Why? What's the difference? Isn't a slave also movable? The difference is that when I designate a slave to be a potiki, to be used for repayment, that will create publicity. Matters about slaves, people talk about more, and therefore, since everybody knows I designated it as such, someone who buys a slave should have heard it and will have that in mind when he buys a slave. He'll take that into account in the price and of his risk that this thing may be repossessed if I don't pay back the loan. So therefore, it can be used. However, if I designate a cow, people don't care about the cows so much. They're not going to talk about it, and the buyer will have no way of knowing that there's a lien on the cow. Therefore, it's unfair to hold that buyer responsible and repossess it from him. And therefore, there is no lien on cows. And so this is true, right? Not only if you without designation, but even with designation, there's no lien on cows. And that's the difference between the Resha and the Sefa. The Resha is talking about real estate. Real estate, there generally is going to be a lien on it because most people have loans out that are with a written document, and there's going to be a lien on the land, and therefore when I sell the land, if I sell it without a guarantee, I am interested in that land being kept by you, the buyer, so that it can be available for a creditor to take. That's not true for movable items where the creditor can't take it anyway, and therefore I have no interest in you keeping the cow or not keeping the cow, and therefore for cows, I can testify that yes, you are the rightful owner. Now we ask, now there is a way to have a lien on movable items. How do you do that? If I sell you, there's different ways of transferring movable items. One way is if I sell you a cow, you pull the cow. Once you pull the cow, it's yours. That's like a standard way. But there's also kinyan agav. If I sell you a piece of land, then I can write, listen, I'm selling you this piece of land, and along with it, also the following movable items. That's a perfectly legitimate way of transferring movable items. And if you do it in that way, and there is a lien on the land, then that lien on the land also is in effect for the property, so you can have a lien on a cow. And in that case, maybe I should worry that maybe I transferred this cow with land, together with land, agav land, and I transferred the lien on it also. And in that case, a creditor will be able to collect the land that I gave you and the cow that I sold along with it. And since that's a possibility, then I am an interested party. I am interested in you keeping the cow so that my creditor can collect it. Why don't we worry about that such a case, and therefore say that I cannot testify not only for real estate but also not for a cow? And how do we know that you can do kinyan agav in such a way and transfer a lien? Tamar Rabba, I akni le metaltele agav mekarkae, kane mekarkae, kane metaltele. Rabba said, if I transfer to you movable items along with land, so just like one acquires the land with the lien, so too one acquires the movable items with the lien. Rabba adds a caveat. You have to make sure to write the following words in the document when you're selling something, that this sale is conclusive. Asmachta is something that you do on condition. Listen, if it rains tomorrow, if I don't come through for you and come to the meeting, then I'll sell it to you. But people sometimes make conditional statements like a bet that they don't really think that it's going to come true, so they're not fully resolved to actually give it over. If they're not fully resolved in their mind, then it's not a binding document, and also not a template. Sometimes people would copy out a template of a document, of a legal document, as practice. You download from legaldocuments.com and you print one out because you want to study what it is. It's not a usable document because only there as a draft. As a sample. So you have to write in it, this document is a real document. It's not a bet, and it's not just a practice draft document. These words also are currently in our ketubot, that the husband cannot say, "Oh, I was just betting. This is just a draft." No, this is a real document. These words are in there. Okay, so this is Rav Chisda just adding, by the way, that in order to make a proper transfer of land and movable items with the land, you have to make sure to put this phrase in. Okay, so back to our question. How come, regarding a cow, you assume I'm not an interested party? Maybe I sold you the cow agav land, and the cow also has a lien, and I want you to keep the cow so that my creditor can take it. And therefore, the law of the cow should be the same as the land. And the answer is Here in this baraita, we're assuming a case that I bought this cow and sold it immediately, and therefore there's no possibility that there is a lien on the cow, because generally there's a lien on something that I own at the same time while I borrow the money. When I borrow the money, I say, listen, you have a lien on all the property that I currently have, even if I should sell it afterwards. But any future property that I'm going to buy later on, there's no lien on that. And the property that I once upon a time owned and already sold, also there's no lien on that. So we're talking about a case, you see, even according to the second answer, which is simpler than the first answer, here, to make sure all the possibilities work, we still have to limit the braita to a specific case, where if I buy this cow and I flip it, right, within 2 minutes, I sell it again. So there's no possibility that I had any loan in between. So there's definitely no lien on it, since for sure there's no lien on the cow. Once I sell it, even if I would sell it agav land, there's no lien on the cow, and therefore I certainly would not be interested in the cow being in your possession, because there's no creditor that's going to take it, because I flipped it immediately. All right, so we have to really limit it to that case. Hold on, why don't we worry that maybe when I made the loan from this guy, I said, I'm going to borrow $1 million from you. If I write in the document, you have a loan on any property that I have and any property that I will acquire. In the ketubah, until today, we have this word also. The husband says, any property that I will acquire is indebted to you to pay for the ketubah. So if you write that, so then it can apply to future properties, and maybe there is. Even if I flip the cow within 2 minutes, maybe there's a lien on it, because beforehand I took out a loan with this verb that's in the future. So shemat mina dikne kana machar kana vehodish la mishtabed. Should we learn from this baraita and conclude that if someone puts in this future verb, anything that I will acquire, and then after the loan he buys something and sells it, or buys something and then he bequeaths it to someone else, that there is not going to be a lien on it, right? Because that would be one answer to this, that a future statement doesn't work. Now this is a big machloket at the end of this masechet. So should do we have a conclusive proof from here? Right? We don't bring to such a conclusive proof when we discuss that. So it's not actually. It's obviously not a simple matter. So what if you say that this language does work, and so therefore there can be a lien even on something that I buy and sell within 2 minutes, because maybe there was a prior loan in which I wrote that there will be a lien on anything I acquire in the future. And then if I sell that cow to you, agav, land that has a lien on it, then the land will transfer, and therefore I will want this cow to be in your possession so that it can be available for a creditor to take, and therefore I am an interested party, and therefore a cow also I would not be able to testify. So we answer la siricha de akamri adim yadinan be behai de la hava le ara meolam. We're talking about a case where this whole baraita is talking about a case where witnesses come and say, we know regarding this guy that he never owned land in his whole life. He never owned land. Since I never owned land, so therefore, even if I have a loan out from, I took a loan from someone else, he can't have a lien on any land because I don't own any land. So now I have a cow, I sell the cow to you. I cannot sell the cow kinyan agav because I don't own any land and never owned any land. So if I cannot sell the cow with the kinyan agav, then there can never be a lien on the cow. And so once I sell you the cow, that's a final sale. No one's it's not going to be available to a creditor, and therefore I have no interest in whether the cow remains in your property or not. So that's what it's talking about. If in fact I own land, and most people do own land, then this whole baraita won't work. The baraita is only a case where I don't own any land, so therefore it cannot be a kinyan agav land, and I sell you a cow, and therefore the cow does not have a lien on it, and that's why I'm not an interested party and I can testify. We end the sugya with one last question. V'amar papa, afagav damud banan hamocher sadeh lechavero shelo b'achrayut ba ba'al chov utrafa eno chozer alav nimset she'ena shelo chozer alav. Papa said, even though the rabbis made a ruling that if I sell you land without guarantees, no guarantees, final sale, right? Don't come back to me. And then my creditor comes and takes the land from you. So then you, the buyer, cannot return to the seller and say, hey, give me my money back because I sold it to you without a guarantee. I told you, right? If my creditor takes it, that's it. I'm not paying you back. Even though that's true. However, even though these rabbis agreed that if it turns out that this land was never mine in the first place to sell to you, then you can come back to me and get your money back. Because I sold you something that was never even mine. I sold you just some random piece of land, and I have to pay you back. Okay, this question is actually not on the Resha, which is about a field, but it's a question regarding the Sefa about a cow, because the same would apply to a cow. If I sell you a cow, then that's a final sale. And even let's say there's a lien on the cow, and because it was Kinyan Nagav and my creditor takes the cow, I don't have to pay you back. That's it, because I said without a guarantee. But even if that's true, nevertheless, if someone else comes and claims it was never my cow to begin with, then I do have to pay you back for the cow. If I sell you a movable item that was never mine, then you can come back and say, hey, you sold me something that was never yours. You're a thief. And then I would have to pay you back. And therefore, even in the case of a cow, it is in my interest to testify on your behalf so that the cow remains yours, because otherwise, if someone else takes it and says it was theirs in the first place and I sold you something that was never mine, then I will have to pay you back. So therefore, even in the case of a cow, I am an interested party. Two answers. We're talking about a case only where the buyer recognizes that this cow is offspring of my cow, right? And he says so. He admits, yes, this cow is definitely yours. Once he admits, then no one else will be able to. Then once the buyer admits that this cow belonged to me and that he bought it, so then he will never have a claim against me to say, oh, you sold me something that wasn't yours, because he already admitted that it belonged to me. That's answer number one. Rav Zavid amar, afilu nimset shena shelo eno chozer alav damar le lehachi zabini lach shelo b'achrayut. Rav Zavid argues with this entire law, the assumption of Rav Papa, and he thinks that even if it turns out that this cow that I sold you was never mine, nevertheless, you, the buyer, cannot come back to me, the seller, and say I have to pay you, because I'll tell you that's why I sold it to you without a guarantee. That's the whole point. I sold you, final sale. I don't want to see you anymore. No more litigation. And even if it turns out that this cow was never mine, since I sold it to you without a guarantee, you cannot come back to me to get the money back. And that's why, in the case of the sefa, once I sold you the cow, I am not interested. It doesn't matter to me whether you keep it in your possession or not, and that's why I'm not an interested party, and I can testify as opposed to their shower. It's talking about real estate. In that case, I will have to pay back if the land turns out not to be mine, or there's a lien on it and it's taken away, and therefore in the Resh I am an interested party and cannot testify. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen ve'amen.